I'm Neil Rockind. This is the Killer Cross-Examination Podcast. Welcome back. And it is my distinct honor and privilege to welcome one of Michigan's most well-known and best, most versatile lawyers. I mean, like, this is one of the guys who can do it all, not just criminal, not just civil, but he can do it all. Andrew Abood, and he's here in my office, in the studio, and we are talking face to face. I'm so glad you're here, Andrew.
For sure. That's quite the intro. I'm going to have to use that on my podcast.
Well, it's well deserved. Well deserved. So for those who don't know, just give me your background about, like, you know, your firm, how you started, where your firm is located, and what you do.
I'm born and raised in Lansing. My dad was a criminal defense lawyer. And, every day, every night, I grew up with 10 kids every night, no matter where the conversation started, right? At the dinner table, because back then you had dinner with the family.
Right.
It always ended with him talking about the law, about a case or whatever. And I was a golfer, so golf course was right up the street. And I always say I grew up on the other side of the tracks, which people take that one way, but I sort of grew up on the good side. But when you're at the bottom of 10 kids,
yeah,
I got to tell you, the parents don't really care at that point, you know.
Are you the youngest?
No, I'm eight.
You're eight.
At the bottom. Okay. So, we went to public school, back then, and I don't know whether you remember this. Maybe you were brought up different, but back then, you didn't want your parents knowing what you were doing, right? They didn't come to practice. They didn't come to the, when your parents
no helicopter parenting back then, right?
When your parents asked you what you did, you just say nothing,
right?
nothing. So
you always know that you said something really good when you get Roberto laughing, the producer laughing over in the corner.
So I never really had a dream to practice law or be a lawyer. But I went through college, and I played on the golf team, and I was at James Madison. A lot of my friends were going to go to law school. And I just took the LSAT I didn't study for it. I walked in, I took it. I didn't do very well, but I had 3 siblings, older siblings at Cooley at the time. And I just thought, and I was sort of working at the firm as like, I was going to school and I was working there making maybe $8 an hour, just a runner. And I thought, I got another year of eligibility. I could try and get my MBA, but maybe I'll go to law school, and I get to practice law with my dad for a period of time, and that'll be great, and I'll see where it goes. And I got into Cooley at the time, not because of, it was pretty open door, it was almost like a community college in some ways. Anybody could get in, and I still remember that first day, because it was the day after Michigan State played USC on Labor Day, and so 1987, right? It was the year we went to the Rose Bowl, but our first game was against USC, and I walked in and to class, and I had a few stamps on my hand, right, from the night before East Lansing, and
from a bar or from the bar. Okay, yeah.
And I was probably.
Which bar? Let's give him a plug. Which bar?
Well, it would have been Dooley's at the time and Rick's. And,
okay.
Dooley's is no longer there. It's now Harper's. And I was probably still drunk,
Good way to start law school.
Yeah, and I'm sitting there in the front row, and I'm just praying Stockmeyer doesn't call on me. I mean, you remember that first day of law school, right?
I do.
And I wrote down 1,085. And that wouldn't mean anything to you, but I remember writing it on my notepad, and that's 3 times 365. And law school was a 3-year commitment. I said, for the first time in my life, I'm going to study. I don't know if I'm going to make it through this thing, because a lot of people would fail out back then. And I said, I'm going to do everything I can to learn everything, do it the right way. I'm going to commit 100%. And, I ended up getting good grades and practicing law with my dad, despite the fact that you're not licensed. When you're in a small law firm like that, and if you're competent and you're good and you show up, you're writing briefs and
Yeah.
going to court
You're
with
getting
somebody,
big tasks.
and
You got big responsibility.
and it was I call it the romantic era for
Okay.
me, because my dad was a great lawyer, and so that's and I don't know whether you call your practice, but my dad used to say we were street lawyers, and I think Fishman calls it something like that. I've talked to him before, but we're not the kind of lawyers that you get a call from a big corporation. We represent real people, right? I mean,
Right.
that's what he always did, and that's what we continue to do. That's our bread and butter. So criminal defense and divorce and personal injury.
Let me just set the table a little bit, so that, because I know you and I know what you're able to do and what you do, but I just want to highlight just some of your chops. So there was a very well-known case, very highly publicized case many years ago. It's probably 20 years ago now, maybe longer, involving a police officer in Illinois named Drew Peterson.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was 07 we got involved in that case.
You were involved in the Drew Peterson case.
Right.
That was a big case. That guy was
big. It was
he was like a black widow, but the
was-
black husband. I mean, I don't
It
want.
was
He was a black widower, I guess,
it was
right?
comparable to like the Nancy Guthrie media now.
Captured the news, everybody, right? That was a huge
yeah,
case.
It was every night.
And you were also, I think, that's why I said black widower, because I think he had more than one spouse who was alleged to have died on his watch.
That's the fourth wife, Stacy Peterson. They never charged him with, but she went missing, and then they exhumed the third wife, Savio, and that's what he was charged with.
How long had you been practicing when you got involved in Drew Peterson's case?
So 07, so it would have been 17 years.
Okay. And then you've had that's just one case I know of that you've been involved in. That's sort of the eye of the hurricane. You had another eye of the storm. You were involved in the Lisa Tim Holland case.
Right, which you were
I was involved in. I'm familiar with. I was involved in that case very briefly.
That was a big national case.
That was a case in which a child went missing.
Ricky Holland, 7-year-old on July 5th
and
of 05.
And full disclosure, I was involved in that case in the very beginning.
Right.
And then had to withdraw due to conflict between the parents.
It worked right around here. I think Tim did, and that's what made it sort of convenient for you to get involved.
And it was fascinating.
You would have been a great lawyer. You might have won that case.
I don't know about that, but I
not
appreciate
that Mike wasn't a great lawyer, or that I didn't, but we could have used your help.
So
we could have used your help.
I remember, and so you were involved in that case, and that was a national case because that was a case in which a very rare case of parents being accused of taking part in the killing of a child.
They first reported him missing or being kidnapped, and there was a big search, and then Tim Holland led the police to the body,
and then they kind of pointed the finger at each other in a way.
If you talk to the police, they said they quickly knew that it was.
I remember in the beginning. Then I remember that, and then I know that you were involved in. I think your firm was involved in some of the mass tort cases against. I don't know if it was Nassar or if it was Anderson or both.
Both of them we had.
Both involving Larry Nassar and accusations of
Dr. Anderson
and Dr. Anderson at U of M. So both of the major colleges of Michigan have had we'll say it, pedophiles or people in positions of power that mistreated students or patients or others. You were involved in those, and then just recently, you made news by defending Mel Tucker, former Michigan State coach. Tell me about that. So I just want people to know that don't know you. I mean, I'm not sitting here just talking to like a guy down the street. Like, you've got real chops.
Yeah, I mean, we spend a lot of money for people to know us. So I got to reevaluate my advertising. But I don't have a Detroit presence or this market as big a presence. But we do have an office down here. But you're right. I have your practice takes you to certain areas, and I happen to have a presence in East Lansing, and fortunately, Mel was a friend of mine, and so we represented him and against in defending him against the case that Brenda Tracy brought in. I think it was January 28th. The judge dismissed the claim, so that was a successful defense in a civil manner.
What now? When I say all around, because there are like pound for pound boxers that there's a guy who's a heavyweight and there's a guy who's like a welterweight. And then there are people who specialize, like in the Olympics, where you see the people in the Olympics, in the Summer Olympics mostly. There's someone who really focuses on a particular race, like they run like the 100, or they swim the 100, the 50. Yeah. And then there are people that are more versatile, like Michael Phelps. And in that way, you're sort of, to me, more like Michael Phelps, which is a tremendous compliment because you do more than just like, I do criminal defense and I have my hand in, which I've told you, a handful of police misconduct cases where someone else brings me in and I'm maybe my hand in a couple of divorce cases, but really for the purposes of coming in and cross-examining, a witness or two, which is what I'm known for. But you're kind of like an all-around, like you're like a decathlete. I mean, like a Michael Phelps, you do everything.
Well, we do, and we've done it for a long time, and I just don't know anything different. But I do believe that fundamentally, what makes you successful in one area can make you successful in any area in terms of trial work. It's fundamental to being a good trial lawyer. What you do for a criminal case is no different than a divorce case or a personal injury case. Now,
what do you think makes a good trial lawyer?
So fundamentally, you have to be an original source guy. So, you in a criminal case, you get a police report, right? That's not an original source, right? It's generally secondhand. So it's okay, I know what the cop's gonna say, probably, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you haven't been to the scene. You haven't talked to the witnesses. You haven't. I mean, there's a million different little things that you could do to go to the original source, right? And when you do all that stuff, you can change your perspective on your appearance or your point of view of the case. And that's fundamentally that's the starting point. And too often, young lawyers, and I don't like to have this generational thing, but lawyers aren't taught that. Well, have you been to the scene? Have you talked to this witness? And you've probably done this, thousands of times, might be an overstatement, right? But you get a police report and you start to read it and then you call the witness, right? And it completely changes the point of view, sometimes bad, but most of the time for the better, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is extremely important, whether it's a car accident or a divorce case. You've got to do the appraisals, you got to get the bank statements, you got to look at the credit cards, you've got to fundamentally understand what the value of the marital estate is, to really get an idea of, if you're dividing property, what value truly is.
So what qualities do you think you have that sort of fit into that? I mean, you see people that are on TV that say that they're, they got guys who pictures of sharks and guys have pictures of alligators. I've got pictures of, the Rottweiler behind me, or I did at one point, so what?
Well, I mean, it's a great question. And when you're taking, look at, everybody's interested in high profile cases, right? And when you're taking a high profile case, right, the train has already left the station by the time you get involved, almost always, right?
What do you mean by that?
The if it's a homicide or a car accident or whatever, by the time the lawyer gets involved, opinions have already formed, right?
Yes.
And you have to have the ability to change that opinion. And the question is, how do you do it, right? How do you do it from day one? Now, sometimes, if you're doing plaintiff's work, everything's going your way. If there's a serious car accident, right, and it's a semi truck or drunk driver, you're just you got put all your chips in the middle, right?
Well, in a plaintiff's case where you're bringing the case, you're sort of setting you're setting the agenda.
Right. And it's
your opening press conference, your complaint.
You might have everything going your way, but in a criminal case, right, too often the damned is your client, and the prosecutor doesn't have to do anything because the press has already done it for him. So the question really is, how do you change that point of view? How do you fundamentally change it? And we talked about the theme, but how do you, come up with something that has a cadence with people fundamentally? Like,
you think anybody can do this gig, or you think it only can do this job, or you think there's only a rare few that can do it or do it well?
I think that a lot of people can do it. A lot of people can't do what you do, right? And I'll just say, I don't know if I'm as good as you. I mean, I hope that I am, but it's difficult to walk into a courtroom when you may know the judge, you may get along with them, but you're on a short leash, right? Mm-hmm. And you've got to be very aggressive, right? And you've got to, whether it's a police officer or a victim, you've got to go after them, and not in a I don't want to say it's not necessarily, it can be very personal. So I don't want to say it's not personal. It can be very personal, but in the pursuit of truth, right? You have to be unrelenting, right? This is what you're going to say, and this is what you did, and this is what you told the police, and what about this, and what about that? That kind of attack, and I've seen you do it. It can be very personal. It can make a police officer, it can make any esteemed person look very bad.
Right.
But you got to be able to do it, right?
Yes.
And I don't think everybody is cut out for that. Right?
I agree with you.
But can people?
You can.
You hope you can.
No, you can.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you.
You can.
That. You have to be like. You have to be like. And I don't know. You say, what are the qualities? Right. I think one quality is you have to be fearless of what anybody thinks.
That's hard.
But you also have to do it in a way that has a point for the jury. You know what I mean? Like,
see, it's hard because we're in a profession in the business, right, where we want to be. We're in the business of. We have to appeal to at least the 12 people that are in the jury, and
sometimes only one.
Sometimes you
that's right. Sometimes you're just looking for one.
But but the idea is you can't be so offensive and now that you have to you want to appeal to the panel,
right?
And I understand you want to at least appeal to one. By the same token, I understand what you're saying, because I have handled cases I have co-counsel cases with other very good lawyers who are they're nice. They're really nice. They're exceptionally nice people. And they're very good, very smart lawyers.
Right, 100%.
But they're nice. And right at the point where I feel like they should be taking their hand and doing that, they're almost like, hey, do you want to sit back a little bit, because my hand's about to
right
you know what I mean? They're so nice,
right? And listen, there's a lot of great ways to cross-examine and be super effective, and it's not always I don't know, want to use maybe it's bombastic or what, you know what I mean? It's not. Sometimes you can kill them with 1,000 cuts, right?
Yes. Death by 1,000 cuts.
And you have to balance it, right? But
okay.
You have to do that balancing. But
on that scale, where are you? Really nice to bombastic and hard.
I hope I can. I hope I have range.
Okay.
I hope I have range, right?
Do you think you can go all the way back and forth?
I mean, if you're uh, examining a child or a true victim, you know, a mother, I tried a case. Uh, it was a death case. It was a civil infraction causing death. 21 or 22-year-old girl driving her moped on campus, and the salt truck guy turned and whatever it was, 10,000-pound truck killed her.
Mm.
And the mom was a victim, right?
Yes.
There was she wasn't an eyewitness. She was just lost her daughter, and there was no, you have to recognize there was no reason to beat her up, right?
Right.
And really none of the witnesses, I tried that case. It was hard for me not to be emotional because you have kids, I have kids. Thank God mine didn't ride mopeds, or at least I didn't know about it, but and we ended up getting a not guilty. And so, as George Perlis used to say, when you win, you did everything right. Now, we know that's not true. And when you lose, you did everything wrong. And we know that's not true. But sometimes that's the way you feel. But, yeah, you have to have range, I always think of Dustin Hoffman, Rain Man. You got to have range.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always it's not always easy to do, right? Because when I've seen you, you're really good at, you're always in the fourth gear, right? But I'm sure you have,
So
I'm sure you make those assessments.
Well, what's interesting is that, I have this this reputation. People call it the Rockweiler and all that. This reputation of just being in there and breathing fire. But I just finished a case. In fact, I just had a call from a prosecutor about another case that I'm in the middle of, and the victim, complainant, opposite party, whatever you want to call him, was really rattled by the cross-examination that my cross during the preliminary exam, during the preliminary hearing.
Right.
But she was surprised because I wasn't aggressive. I'm just not. People may attribute this level of aggressiveness to me, like that I'm going to be swinging from the chandeliers, like in Kill Bill. But I mean, But
right.
I'm really not. I mean,
right. But you can do a lot.
I had some moments in court where I went after a witness, even in front of the jury, and I sat down after. And I sat there and I writing a note to myself, like to nobody but me, like, fucking hope that wasn't a mistake. You know what I mean? Like, I hope that was all right. And as it turns out, in that case, because I had to have a ton of range in the case I was just describing, the jury wanted me to go after that witness.
I do think it's entertaining.
I
do think it's right?
they wanted
I do think that with everything on TV, I do think juries want to be entertained.
You think that TV and TV shows and law and crime and court TV, you think that's changed our profession?
I mean, I think there has been a change in our profession, but I think that whether you watch Anatomy of a Murder or To Kill a Mockingbird, there's always been an impression of lawyers in a courtroom. And with all the lawyers today, right, and there are a lot of them, and there are a lot of them doing what you do and what I do, and they don't come in dressed to the nines. They don't, they're not prepared. They're not. So it's the TV thing of what jurors' expectations are like, and they're thinking, why aren't they doing this, or why, it's a awkward feeling. My cousin Vinny, the other guy, right? He can't ask a question, and everybody's wants him just to spit out a question, right? And so, that I think that jurors want to see great lawyering, right? They're in the front row, right? And so if they miss it, and you can have great lawyering in any kind of case, right? Even if it's a landlord tenant or name the case, you can have really great lawyering. And I think, if you're cross-examining an expert, right? You don't have to be over the top. Sometimes you can get the expert to go right down where you want them to go, right? Without fighting them. If you're prepared and you know what you're doing, and it's an amazing thing to watch.
I agree.
As a fan.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
And so, and I think jurors appreciate that, right? Whether they may not vote your way, but you gain a lot of credibility when you can do that.
Tell me about the Mel Tucker case. I'm interested because, and here's why I want to ask you about it. So, Mel Tucker came into Michigan State University as the head football coach, beat Michigan, right?
Twice.
Excuse me. Beat Michigan twice. Thank you for rubbing that in. And it seemed like, like he and the program were, we're like a match made in heaven, it seemed like. I mean, beating your rival.
There was a confluence of variables, a lot of variables going on. And I think he was, a victim of some of those and some of his own conduct, obviously. But
what was the case about?
Well, he was a head coach of Michigan State. Most people know that. And Brenda Tracy, who he had a relationship with, and I'm not suggesting, they obviously had a relationship to the extent that she came to Michigan State. She spoke to the players. She's a sort of self-proclaimed survivor of something that happened to her out west when she was, I think, at Oregon or one of the big schools out west. Claimed she was assaulted, and I don't know much about it. So that she came and she spoke to the football team on at least one occasion, and then sometime after that, she filed a OIE complaint, which is sort of Michigan State's Title IX office, against Mel Tucker for a phone call that lasted 36 minutes in which she claims he pleasured himself on the phone. And that's sort of the nature of the claim. And so that would have been, I think, in late 2022 or early 23, and they were conducting their investigation. I don't know if you've done any OIE work, but we do it at Michigan State pretty.
You do it for Michigan State, or you do it for
students mostly.
For students.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's pretty common that if there is they sort of a tag along, like if you get a drunk driving, you might have an implied consent hearing. If there's a sexual assault charge, there might be a Title IX investigation, and Michigan State calls it its Office of Institutional Equity, the acronym OIE.
When you got the case, did you expect? Well, was he disciplined through OIE?
Yeah, so I wasn't involved in that part of the case. They had big law firms. Is it Foley and Lerner? A big law firm, good lawyers. They were representing him. A lot of people involved. And they just sort of wanted some local influence. And I had known Mel since he got here, and we had played golf, and my brother was really good friends with him. And so somehow my name came up, and they reached out to me, and I got involved in Brenda Tracy's first lawsuit against him, and that was dismissed.
Just recently?
Well, it was dismissed, I think, in 24.
Oh, okay.
And she had a couple of LLCs, and she sued, and Miller Johnson was sort of the lead on it. And I worked with Miller Johnson and Foley. I mean, it was a mess. They had sued the law firm and the lawyers for releasing text messages, and ultimately Judge Stokes dismissed that case. And then in 24, she filed another lawsuit, almost the same allegations against Mel Tucker. So her individually against Mel Tucker, and then just recently in January of 25, Judge Stokes dismissed that as well. And there were a whole host of maybe obvious civil defenses, including res judicata and collateral estoppel and statute of limitations, and the judge agreed with it. In fact, Brenda Tracy's lawyer agreed with most of our motion. There were just a few arguments that were disputed by them.
So, I mean, you're no stranger to those types of big cases. And I do give you a lot of credit for being able to do civil and criminal, because a lot of folks, like I told you, were just, they kind of stick with what they know or do well.
Some people could make money just in one area, and it would be a lot easier. But
let me ask you about sort of your courtroom style and some of the cases you've handled and some favorite moments. So, obviously there's, there's voir dire, opening, cross, get to present, a case if you have one, direct, and then closing. Like, what's your favorite part of the trial? What's the part of the trial that you think is the most Andrew Abood is really good at this?
Well, I can tell you what I think is the least important, which is opening.
Okay.
I mean, opening sets the tone, and you can do a lot of things. And I've been told by bailiffs, I think you just won the case. But if you do a case that's longer than a day, especially if it's a week, nobody remembers the opening other than the lawyers who want to stick it to the other side. Right?
I agree with you there.
Right. I think I'm pretty good at jury selection.
Okay.
Especially if I'm given a longer leash, and sometimes you're given a really short leash, and it can be difficult. But I don't know that I'm great at using the preemptions. It's a gut reaction. But I think I'm good at getting my theory across, and I think I'm entertaining.
Do you have a shtick?
Yeah.
Give me some of your shtick.
Do we have time?
Yeah, you got time. Give me a shtick.
I got. I'm happy. So
give me a shtick.
So the background of it is, I think prosecutors work to lower the burden of proof.
I agree with you.
And they do that by circumstantial evidence and this thing about raining outside and blah, blah, blah. And you can base circumstantial evidence. There can be enough circumstantial evidence to convict. And so, it's not 100%. They'll talk about all kinds of stuff about, you don't have to be proof, whatever.
100%.
Yeah, right.
If you know something 100%, what does that mean? That means if you saw it. If you saw it, you're a witness, and you can't be a witness and a juror in the same case. Ha ha ha.
So I was battling this years ago, the mother. Can we swear on this?
Yeah, fuck yeah.
So,
I'll do it. Yeah, fuck yeah. Swear as much as you want.
If you're in this
the fucking podcast,
if you're in this work, right? And you do something like a drunk driving, and drunk drivings are tough. They're really tough because everybody knows what they are, and most of the jurors
have done it,
right? Maybe not gotten caught.
No, but they know what it. They know
definitely know somebody who's gotten caught.
Yeah.
So it's those are tough, and I just was like, motherfuckers, they get up there and they get this pass, and the judge and doesn't have to be 100%. I was thinking about it. So my stick was, when has the government ever had to prove something to you? And usually I get that look from a juror. Tell me a time when the government has had something to prove something to you. And you don't know.
No, I don't
Right,
know. I can't
right.
think of.
And I
can't
said,
think of an
okay,
occasion.
let me ask you this: if you get pulled, have you ever been pulled over before? Most jurors say yes.
Yes,
What do you have to show?
my driver's license.
Right. Has to be a driver's license, right?
Got to have a registration, a proof of insurance.
If you played the lottery and you won, what would you have to show?
I'd have to show a lottery ticket.
Right. And how about if you wanted a refund on your IRS, what would you have to do?
I'd have to show a return, and
Right.
yeah,
Right. You couldn't just write on a piece of paper, send it to the IRS. You owe me $10,000, right?
not unless you want a letter back.
Right. But if you got pulled over, you couldn't draw a picture of yourself and hand it to the cop and say, "Hey, this is me. Look it, that's me," right?
Right.
And if you won the lottery, you couldn't walk in and just write down the numbers.
Just say
Hey,
I got a ticket, but I don't have it. Right.
Right. You have to show the right.
You got to show the proof.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when the government expects you to prove something to them, what do you got to have?
Got to have 100% proof.
You got to have the ticket.
Right. Yep.
You got to fill out a long form and sign it under oath, right?
Yep.
An IRS form, or you got to have your driver's license, right? So do you think you should, if they hold you to that standard, do you think, shouldn't you hold them to the same standard?
I like that. Solid.
Yeah. And usually I can get all the way there. Now,
Without the prosecutor or judge cutting you off.
Yeah. I mean, I've never really had anybody
Shouldn't.
pull the rug out. Now, the other thing I do
That's
is,
strong.
the other thing I do.
Roberto, what do you think of that? Yeah.
The other thing I do is I say, I want you to think about the busiest intersection you're aware of.
Okay.
And I did one of those classes, like a trial thing, and they taught you, if you form a question like this, tell me what the most important, or tell me what you've heard the phrase, that question, right?
Yep.
Tell me what the worst experience, tell me when you were the most afraid, tell me when the biggest decision you've ever made. And you might not get number one, but you'll get a top three, right? You'll get a top three from the juror. So I always say, tell me about the most important decision you've ever had to make. And you get, well, getting married, or somebody was on life support, or, having children, or. So I always say, I want you to imagine you're at the busiest intersection right? And everybody you love is in the car. Tell me what information you want to make that decision.
About whether to go forward, I mean, whether to go through the intersection or whether to.
Tell me what that would be.
I need to know that the light. I need to know that it's green. I need to know that there's.
Okay, you need to know the light's green. Would you check to see if there's cars coming?
Of course.
So even though you know the light's green,
I'd still want to check.
you'd still want to check.
Yeah, I would.
Right?
Yeah.
Would you want to see if other cars were going?
Yes.
Right?
I would still check.
And you kind of go through a whole thing. And so what if you couldn't see the light, but somebody in the back seat said, go ahead and go?
I don't think I would.
Well, do you think that decision is any less important than your decision on guilt or innocence?
No.
And so that's the thing is, yeah, you can rely on circumstantial evidence if it's raining out. Because who cares about that decision?
Right.
That has nothing to do.
Right.
That has nothing to do with you rendering a verdict on guilt or innocence, right?
Right.
If you're going to find somebody guilty, don't you want to look at the light? Don't you want to make sure there's no cars coming? Is that any less important than what you're deciding right now?
No.
Right? And so they want to lower it, right?
Right.
You want to raise it.
Well, you're trying to keep it where at least you're trying to stress the importance of it.
It should be.
Right. Right. Those are both terrific. Those are great.
Yeah. And
Roberto, what do you think of both of those?
They don't always work. They don't always work because ultimately, it's about the facts of the case, right?
Yes.
And the other thing I make sure I work on is if you walked out of the room right now and the judge said you had to render a verdict, what would your verdict be?
It would be not guilty.
Well, yeah, you know that answer.
I know.
How many times do you get?
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know what it would be. I'm not sure. Well, what if I told you you could render a verdict? And
so,
like,
in the way that you're going about doing it, which is great, you are getting the jurors in touch with feelings and connecting feelings with their personal feelings, their personal lives, and trying to sort of get them to feel the moment of what they're talking about. There's another school out there of thought about jury selection, which is where you try to get jurors to reveal their biases. Right? And where you want them to say things that are, in a way, bad.
But yeah, you have to have a lot of time.
Right.
You have to really know who they are.
Yes.
Right.
It's hard in a DUI case because you only have 3 peremptories. I mean,
and then you also have to make, you have to make real judgments that,
Like when I ask jurors about the right to remain silent, we call it the client testifying or not. There's one way to do it where you can get up there and you could just talk to them directly and tell them, look, they're going to hear the judge is going to tell you that this is the law, and it's and you can just beat their head or beat them over the head with the fact that that he doesn't have to testify and he can remain silent that's his right and his constitutional right and your flag waiver and you got your American flag.
That's you talking to them.
Right.
Which is you got to be careful about.
And you don't get anything out of that.
Right, 100%.
Now, you get answers that affirm what you're saying because they're all going to say, yeah. You get nothing out of that.
Well, but you can say, tell me some reasons why you think somebody shouldn't take the stand.
Okay, that's great.
And what do you think about that?
And I try to give them along those lines. I try to give them either a spectrum. I give them 2 ideas about it. Look, there's a school of thought that when you come into a courtroom, I want to hear what he has to say.
Right.
And if he doesn't take the stand, it's because he's hiding something. Right. And if I have enough time and the judge is allowing us to do voir dire, and that's an issue, I'll put that to them just like that. Like, look, there's this thing out there. There are people on this side of the spectrum, this side of the courtroom, who are going to think, if he was innocent, he'd get up there and tell us that.
Right.
And if he doesn't, he's hiding something.
You can always get that commitment, but
and then I want to know, where are you in that spectrum? Like, where do you? And I understand, and I tell him, look, I get it.
Right, 100%.
In my house, when I got my 2 kids that are fighting, I'm like
the person that doesn't want to give us.
I walk over there and I tell him exactly. I walk over there and I tell him, like, Aliyah, Jaden, I'm like,
but when do you?
I don't want to talk about it. No. I want to hear your explanation.
Right. When do you? So, I go through that, and I feel better on cases where they're going to take the stand, and I usually tell them, but trust me, my guy's taking the stand.
Well, of course, because you can.
Do you say that?
Sure, I have.
Oh, good.
I've set up the same thing, and I say, who wants to hear from him? Who thinks he doesn't testify, and who understands why a person wouldn't testify? And I go through all those things, and I say, well, I'm going to tell you right now. And so I make a pledge to them, and when I start my voir dire, I tell them, I get up there and I tell them, I'm so and so. You already know that. I represent him. I have my client typically stand up. I said, we've been at this for X number of months. This is our path to justice. This is our one shining moment. This is the one chance he gets. This is it. I said, and you're the folks that we get to talk to you about that. And this is my one opportunity to pick, attempt to select what we think is going to be a fair jury to hear this case. I said, and I'm not allowed to know you. I'm not allowed to know you before this. I can't know anything about you. So the only way that we know whether or not the group of you is going to be, is going to make up this jury is to be able to get your opinions on, and impressions on important issues in the case. I said, and the only way to do that is to ask you questions.
Right.
And this is the one time in life I'm going to tell you where there are no wrong answers. In fact, to me, the best answers are the ones that are potentially the most offensive.
Most revealing, most offensive, yeah.
You say, I don't like your tie, or I don't like the way you talk.
Yeah.
Great, tell me.
Prosecutor gets up, and they usually say, I don't want to get too personal.
Yeah.
And I get up and say, no, this is very personal.
I say, you can get this, because this is the one chance that I have to ask you, and the one chance that you have to, because once I sit down and we're done, if tomorrow or the next day something dawns on you, oh yeah, I do know who that lawyer is. Oh, I did happen to read about this case. Or, you know what, this subject is too personal for me.
Right.
I don't get a chance to ask you about it.
I think it's tough when
I tell them, this is my last thing I tell you. I make a pledge. So my pledge is that I'm going to be open with you about the things that I'm concerned about.
Right.
I'm going to tell it to you straight during jury selection.
This is bad evidence.
And I just want you
to
do the same. So when I talk about him not taking the stand or something like that, I tell him I'm genuinely concerned that he'll be judged for not taking the stand. What do you think about that?
Those are tough cases.
Those
are tough cases, especially in CSC cases.
Well, in a short case, like a DUI, or those are cases that are typically a day. It's very tough, first of all, and I'm going to ask if you agree or disagree with this. It's very tough to sort of have to develop camaraderie with the jurors over in a day-long trial. It's hard because, I like to be in a trial where they, they see a champion of justice for.
I don't know. I mean, I think so. I've done a ton of district court work, and in fairness, you're not going against the top of the lineup, right?
I'm going to plead the fifth.
You're not going against the top. There's going to be some good prosecutors in district court, but most of them are younger prosecutors that, so you can be the best lawyer in the courtroom in district court. And part of my frustration is, even some of the judges aren't great lawyers, and you know what I mean? You get a lot of bad rulings. You get a lot of well, that's a problem. So I do think you can be.
Albert Hatchett once talked about judges and said, "May he rest in peace." One of the great lawyers that I knew, he once said that he knew many who didn't have much of a practice, and then they sought the bench
right.
like a refuge.
My dad was awful critical.
And then they sought the bench like a refuge, and they got there, put the robe on, and turned to the rest of us and acted like they had made the greatest sacrifice in Solomon.
When I was in private practice.
What are you talking about? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so and those are the ones that typically can make these really tough decisions in a matter of seconds. There's no problem that's too complicated for them to decide.
Right. Don't need a brief.
Abood, what do you got to say? Rockind, what do you got to say? I've heard enough.
Right.
You're like, wait.
I think you can be entertaining. I think you can be fun. I think you can, it's hard to do it all in one day, but I think you can develop. It's not the same as a week-long trial or a 3-day trial, but you can have your moments.
Yeah. So what's your, like, if you look back at your career, what's like one or two, shining moments, one of your moments in court where someone said to you, you can only tell us 2 or 3 stories from your career in the courtroom, and you would say, these are the ones that I got to tell.
I mean, there've been a lot of. Every time you get a verdict, you take a case to verdict. It's significant, and
of course.
And I've been blessed or grateful that a lot of people have had confidence in me, and some of it I'm sure is attributable to my people who have come before me in my family. But, I know that one of the many great moments with Mike Nichols, and Mike and I tried this Holland case, and we had Tim Holland on the phone, and it was how sometimes you can get super focused on a fact that has nothing to do with the case, but it goes to credibility. And there was some fact about how they had fried chicken the night before they had something, right? And so back in '06, I mean, this may sound weird, but somehow we got the calls that were made from a landline from their house, right? And this goes back to the original source thing. So I'm sitting in my office one day, and I call this number, and I call this number, and I call, just finding out who they call. Well, one of them is like Pizza Hut, And so I said, well, they called Pizza Hut. They must have had pizza that night. The whole case was like,
Right.
And the prosecutor's making a big deal about it. So how do you make a big deal about that, right? So I get Tim Holland on the stand, and I'm going through this, and I say to Mike Nichols, give me your phone. And I hand the phone to Tim Holland, right? And I said, call this number. He just went through the whole story about what he had ate the night before. I go, call this number. And he calls the number, and I'm thinking, the guy's going to answer. It's going to be whatever, Pizza Hut, right?
Yeah.
And the person answers, and it's not the Pizza Hut, right? Like, oh my God, how stupid. Like, I know I called this like a million, right? You check and you double check and original source, right? And I get the phone back and I look at it, right? What do you think?
He called a different number.
So I said, what did you think? You could call the wrong number and I wasn't going to check? And he was like, what? I said, did you not think I was going to look at the number you called? I said, call the right number. Like, this isn't
In front of the jury.
everybody.
Right.
Everybody. He calls the right number. And, whatever it was, Mark's
Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the prosecutor gets up and says, oh, yeah, well, yeah, they did have pizza that night, and we just forgot to. I mean, it was like,
Right.
what?
Right.
What?
Right.
Your whole theory was whatever. He didn't get any, because one of their theories was they starved him to death.
So how did that go over in court?
I thought it was great.
It sounds great to me.
I thought it was great.
I wish I had a tape of it. It sounds awesome to me. What's that? It sounds awesome to me.
But ultimately, there was a
Yeah, the evidence.
handwritten
pesky evidence.
There was a handwritten note that got stolen from Lisa Holland that we couldn't overcome. But that was I thought a big moment. I've had to testify.
That's a great. So I love that story. Had me on the edge of my seat. I mean, I love that story. I wonder, was the jury were they into it?
They you could tell. I don't know. Can you tell?
Sometimes.
I mean,
there are some jurors that are very emotive, and you can tell. There are other jurors that are very stone-faced.
I don't know how to explain it, but I would bet that there's a complete change in everybody's attention span when it's your turn to get up to the...
Me, you mean?
Yes.
Me?
Yes.
I like to think so.
Yes. And I think, because they never know what you're gonna... There's always something like...
I tell them, and I also tell them, which I'm sure you do. I try to be. I also tell them, say, look, by the time, the prosecutors are going to do direct examination. Direct examination is, by the time they get up there, the witnesses They know what the questions are good. They've already talked about it. They've already read the reports.
Yeah.
They've already read the transcripts. They've already reviewed it. They've already gone over it. So by the time the witnesses get up there on direct examination, it's pretty much known and rehearsed. It's like a script. That's not the test for truthfulness. That's not the. I had a trial with Fishman where he told the jurors, and they did it. And I've had trials where I've done this since, and they've done the same thing, where you're like, you don't have to take any notes during direct. I'm going to tell you what they're going to say. This one's going to get up there and going to say X, Y, Z. Right. This one's going to say ABC. This one's going to say D, E, F.
I don't know if you've had him on. Great lawyer.
They're going to say these things.
Right.
That's not. I'm telling you, expect that. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to even pay attention to that. It's going to happen. The key is if I get up.
Yeah.
And I get up there and I question the witnesses.
That's so.
Now you want to know how a trial's going? If during the direct the jurors look bored, and then during cross they actually sit up and.
You think that's good?
Yeah,
I think really it's hard to tell.
Yeah,
but
because they're feeding off of what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's good. That in the Drew Peterson case. So I get retained in like fall of 07. Meet with them and. I could tell you a lot of stories about Drew. And I don't know. Obviously, he was convicted, but man, was he treated me well. He really was appreciative. Really was. You don't always get that, right?
Correct.
He was, and it was an experience. Unlike, it was so. My co-counsel, Joel Brodsky, this was before he's charged. They had seized a bunch of stuff from Drew's house. Cars and guns and computers and cameras. All normal stuff. Well, Joel was aggressive and maybe wanted a little press. So he filed the motion to return the evidence. Which you probably never filed that motion, right? I had never seen it. I had never seen it.
I was the recipient of it once when I was a prosecutor.
Yeah, I had never seen it. So it was a great motion. I had never even, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, they don't need this. So, we need an expert, right? So I had just tried a homicide case, and I bring down this woman, Ann Gordon, who would work for the state police. And I said, well, I could get Ann, but she's not from, but it's forensics, so it's a common. So it's like, okay. So we drive down in the morning, snowstorm, I remember it's my first real substantive appearance, and there's no charge, there's no criminal case pending because they're doing this investigation, but we have this motion. And we get into court, and we sort of argue in the morning. And the judge says, okay, I'll give you 45 minutes to present your witness. It's like, okay. And this is in Joliet. It's in Illinois. And we go to lunch across the street at the Irish restaurant that we always went to. And Joel says to me, why don't you do the direct? I'm like, what? I said, Joel, I'm from Michigan, I'm just getting my feet wet. He goes,
right.
He goes, no, go ahead, do the direct. I'm like, okay, but so, you're doing a direct on this issue, and courtroom was packed. There's a bunch of lawyers on the other side, including the elected prosecutor, but John Connor, great lawyer, was doing the, heavy lifting. And I'm walking in, and I'm just like, and you can kind of tell, I don't know, you can kind of sense how long the leash is in any courtroom, right? Does the judge have control? Do you feel comfortable walking up to the podium? If you step away from the podium, are you going to get admonished, right? Federal judges are different. Every judge is different. I just felt, and it's not a courtroom that I'm familiar with, and it's Illinois law, and it's just like, okay, here I go, and I start cross-examining him. Well, Ann had had worked for the state police and gone through a divorce, and she had taken her husband's underwear and tested it and found DNA, I think, from another woman. And so the state police, somehow through the course of the divorce, the state police found out about it. You know, maybe the husband turned it over, whatever. Anyway, she ended up separating from the state police. And the state of Illinois knew about it.
Oh, boy.
And they start cross-examining her on it. Blah, blah, blah. Didn't you do this? They think they're really, beating her up. But so I get to do, first of all, I had 40 minutes, right? And I didn't have, or whatever it was, 25 minutes. I didn't really have, a prepared.
Mm-hmm.
But you go through, you establish the expertise, and you blah, blah, blah. And these are then, what do you need to do for each one of these pieces of evidence, and blah, blah, blah. And somehow I have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and I close it within my time frame, and I sit down, and then they start beating her up. And so now I got to do rebuttal, right? And this whole thing about the underwear. And so I get up, and I, look at the judge has enough information to make a ruling, right? I get up and I said, well, after you tested the underwear, did you give it back? Right?
Okay. Yeah.
And we won the motion.
Wow.
The only thing he didn't get back was, I think, the guns. They kept the guns. But some of the guns they gave back, but he couldn't have them. But they gave the car back. They could ghost the computer. We won the motion. And, I remember walking out of court, and Joel and I were talking. I said, winning is great, but it's never as good as losing is bad. It was great we won, but had we lost, but that was a great moment, because it's like
you were in the moment.
Yeah.
I'm sure you just thought of that on the fly.
Yeah. And the other part of it is you're not on your home field, you're way, and all of a sudden you think, okay, I can play with these guys. You know what I mean?
Was the premise of the motion that they were able to test what they they should give the stuff back once they did their testing?
Yeah, they didn't need to keep it.
Right?
Yeah, and the judge ruled in our favor, and ultimately we did a 1 month hearing, or I can't remember, it was something like 69 or 70 witnesses, an evidentiary hearing having to do with the dying declaration and several statements that were made, and I ended up crossing most of the witnesses, but we sort of divided them equally, and I did a closing, and I held my own.
Good.
And there's something about, hey, you sort of know, like that moment when he walks out of the courtroom and To Kill a Mockingbird and everybody stands up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You've had that experience, I'm sure, almost probably every time.
I don't know about that, but I've had that.
You know what I'm saying? And it's not about, it is about winning, but there's times when you say, okay, I was the best lawyer in the courtroom today. I was, and you can see it in people's faces when you turn around and walk out. Right?
Yes. I've been pretty blessed in courtrooms. I think I've told you before, I take what I do really seriously.
Yeah.
Like I'm a really harsh critic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though they say perfection is unattainable, I'm always, I'm a guy who you gave me a score of a 9.7 on a trial performance. I'm walking out going, the fuck did I not get a 10 for? Like, you
usually know, right?
So,
usually
like, where
know,
did
I should have done this, I should have done that, right?
But there are moments where I've gotten done and I've walked out, and there are either people around or casual observers or whomever or jurors, or just because of I can my perspective of where this compared to others, and I've walked out and I've thought, okay, that was good. Like that was
and
really
a lot of
fucking
times,
good. And I've walked out of them. I have told you this before. Where I got done, and I thought like, fuck, that just did not go the way that I thought it was going to go. I'm grateful to have had more of the former than the latter. But listen, anybody who tells you that they haven't had a bad moment in the courtroom hasn't been in there very much, or doesn't really have a whole lot of isn't being honest.
Everybody, all great lawyers have lost cases.
As I talked with an old colleague of mine, was talking about a recent trial, and I said, we lost, and he goes, we represent the guilty too. Don't forget.
I think it's really difficult to judge yourself when you're in the well.
I never forget. And there are certain things that people have told me over the years that just resonate for me. And look, when I'm in a case, I want to win. I want to win for the client. I want to win for the client's family. I want to win for me. When I'm in court under certain, and I'm at a point where, in a case where I believe that I should win.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that in my view, it's just the nature of the system these days, with the biases and implicit bias, that people hate crime so much. They tend to want to believe the police or the prosecutor. I don't believe that people have a true appreciation for what beyond a reasonable doubt really means. I think that the prosecutors do a very good job of lowering it. I just heard of a colleague of mine who tried a case and lost. He's disappointed, and he said to me, he goes, the jurors said that they could have gone either way. And I think, like, wouldn't you love to be in the jury room like a fly on the wall when they're debating this?
Either way.
The fact that it could go either way means it should only go one way. If it's a coin toss, then that's
probably a question I'll bake into my jury selection, right? Hey, if you're in at the end of this and you feel like this case could go either way, right?
Yeah,
it can only go one way.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Isn't that? Like, you sit there and you say, like, if and you try to find ways to communicate, that to jurors in ways that resonate with them, and
there's still good cases out there.
So
there's still good cases.
I know,
and there's a demand more so than ever.
I've got plenty of
lawyers,
and you know what? And I am when I want to win, and when I just like you, when I get done with a trial, of course, when we win, as George Perlis, I'm going to actually quote George Perlis, but of course we did everything right, which is not the case.
Right.
But it's certainly more comfortable. It's more pleasing to evaluate our performance in the light of a victory,
right,
than it is in the shadow of a loss.
It sure is.
But you can't do this and only have one type of verdict. I'm sorry. I don't. The people that say that they haven't lost a case, I believe, are not being truthful.
The problem with a guy like you, okay, is you develop a reputation for doing magic.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Those are the toughest cases, right?
Roberto, watch me make this disappear.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like you start
not
looking
just
at
me, but I appreciate that.
You start looking at the facts and you go, listen, man, what do you want me to do here?
It's not just
what do you want me to do?
It's
with
not
this?
just me. It's you. You have the same predicament.
They're hiring you for
yes.
everything, and it's like, what do you want me to do? And that's why, some of our best work is on a plea. You know, you can't. Even a first-year law student could try this case and win. You know, they don't need. You know, these are bad facts. You know, and
yeah. Well, we've all had them. So what's on? I'd like to ask, what's on deck for you? What do you have coming up?
We're working.
Got a lot of different things in the hopper. Any trials coming up?
We've got a bunch of civil work we're doing.
Okay.
I've got some really good guys doing the criminal defense, but we're getting retained on cases all the time. And,
okay, that's good.
And you know, hopefully, we had a good year last year, and so on top of, as you know, like, this is a beautiful office. It's not free, right? And you got to figure out how to manage the office and keep people happy. And
yes,
and you know, I mean, we got retained on a federal case that I'm kind of excited to work on. I get a guy out of Florida that I've known since college, and he was former AUSA. So we did a homicide case in Lansing, and he does a lot of our federal work. And
oh, good. Okay.
So that'll be fun. That'll be a fun case. How about you?
Oh, I mean, my plate is, my dance card is always full. I was hoping on the heels of the last case, so once I'm in trial,
Yeah.
I like to just continue to be in trial.
Yeah,
I know that's odd, but I just like to stay. You know, once I'm in that mode,
you gotta go down to Naples or wherever you go to.
I like it. I don't go anywhere. What I wanted to do was I wanted to get hired into I was hoping that I was going to get hired into another case and just go right into picking another jury. I thought I was right on the heels of that, and I was fired up for it. But didn't happen. Client didn't pull the trigger, and so we've got other stuff.
How many lawyers do you have?
So we have 4 lawyers total in our office,
Yeah.
a paralegal, several law clerks.
All doing criminal.
All.
Yeah. That's impressive.
We had a really.
Let me just pay you some props, okay?
We had a really fun. I appreciate that. We had a really interesting experience yesterday. We had a witness who actually appeared on a case, and didn't come into the courthouse, and then apparently left, and it created this big issue where the prosecutor wanted to adjourn the case because the witness wasn't there, and the witness claimed that she told the prosecutor she was in the hospital, and we're like, nonsense. I mean, she was like out front sitting in her car, and we went down and looked at the security video from the courthouse, and it was really, and the judge ended up dismissing the case, and with kind of a warning that we're looking for the flock video, you know, from the cameras from the you know, the intersection and all that. It was very interesting. We learned that the prosecutors are not going to rewrite the case, so which I'm grateful for.
I got a case dismissed.
But it was a wild experience, like just a trip.
Let me just pay a compliment. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't. But a lot of people do criminal defense, right? And most of us were solo practitioners, right? So, you know, or they do an office share, and you know, they do. And I'm not knocking solo practitioners, but when you can have a law firm that has 3 or 4 lawyers doing just criminal defense, that's a real value, right?
Oh, thank you.
That is a real value, and it's really rare. Like when my dad was practicing, and it was me and my brothers, we had 5 or 6 lawyers that could do a criminal case and had tried criminal cases, and I didn't know anybody in the state that had that many lawyers in the same firm,
right,
making
that's
money.
Rare.
You know what I mean? And I don't know if you do court-appointed work, maybe do some felony federal stuff. I don't know. Federal is sort of a different animal, but
yeah.
But you know, you have to be really good, but you bring a lot of value to your clients when you have 3 or 4 lawyers, and you can, hey, what do you think of this, or what do you think of that? And you know, it shows, right?
Yes.
It shows in your work, and it shows in
Yes.
everything you do.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think the same goes for your office. So, let me ask you this: where are your offices located? I know East Lansing.
We have
and then
one.
you have
We have Birmingham. Yep.
and East Lansing.
And East Lansing. But, that's important. But we're all over the state.
So you have a podcast too?
Yes. And you're coming. I think
I know.
They were asking me about it. So you're probably coming out in a week or something.
Cool. Well, people will tune in. What's the name of your podcast?
The A-List Hour.
A-List Hour. So
And
they had a B-lister on there for once, which was me.
Hardly.
But
I look up to you.
Well,
I look up to you. I've seen you in court.
we got to find someone else. We got to find you somebody really to look up to. Somebody
No,
really
I don't think so.
worthy.
No, I mean,
somebody worth it.
I've
I
always
appreciate it.
look at. There's nothing wrong with having a great friend who's a great lawyer in a courtroom to look up to.
I appreciate
that's
that.
a real honorable thing to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, look, I had a great time talking to you.
This was great.
I enjoyed it tremendously. The stories were great. Your career is awesome. I love the fact the Drew Peterson story is just, I can just picture the whole thing. I can just picture going into a case in a I say foreign, but I mean another state, foreign territory.
It's
you don't know anybody. You're walking in there, and of course, it's not even like a popular cause. And you're walking in there, and you're just, overcoat swinging in the wind, and you know what I mean. You feel like it's like the Tombstone and OK Corral, and you came out on top, which is awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Listen, man, I appreciated it.
This
is Andrew Abood, my dear friend, a good friend. I'm so glad he came down and did the podcast. I appreciate it. So I'm Neil Rockind. That was Andrew Abood. This is the Killer Cross-Examination Podcast, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.